If you do any sort of teaching, training, or presenting, you have probably experienced a lot of different types of training participants in your class. You've probably had, if you're like me, you've had people fall asleep. You've had people get angry. You've had people who weren't paying attention. So how do you deal with these different types of training participants? Well, that's what I want to talk to you about today. Hey, it's Jeff with yourlearningcareer.com. So yes, in my 20 plus years of learning and development experience, I have dealt with all kinds of different training participants, and there are different ways that you can use to handle the various situations and types. Now, because I am a Disney nerd, I have decided to categorize the different types of training participants into 7 categories to match the 7 dwarfs. So bear with me here. It'll make sense in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to start with the easiest dwarf, and that is happy, right? When we think of training participants who are happy, they are the ones who are glad to be there. They see the value in your training. They are the ones you want everybody in the class to be. And I would say most of the time when I am conducting training, that is usually the majority of the people in my class. You know, they're pretty happy to be there. They appreciate the opportunity, especially if I've done a good job at explaining to them why they're there. You know, when you set the expectations, you give them the why. This is why you're here. This is why we're doing this. You will generally have a group of happy participants. Okay, so the next one, number 2, I want to talk about our good friend, Sleepy. Have you ever looked out into your training class and you saw this? Yes, I'm sure you have. I know I have. And of course, what is our first inclination? We get offended. We're like, how dare they? I can't believe this person would fall asleep while I'm talking about the importance of bloodborne pathogen training. What do you do when you have a sleepy? Usually they catch themselves and they will, maybe stand up or go get a coffee or something like that. But if it is something where it's a distraction, then what I will do is on a break. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I'm not going to call them out. Hey, you keep falling asleep. What I will do is on the break, I'll go up to them. I'll say, hey, I noticed that it looks like you're kind of dozing off. And is there something I can do to maybe help you with, staying awake or paying attention? Most of the time they are super apologetic. I mean, of course they're embarrassed, but that's why I do it in private. I do not want to make them feel any more embarrassed than they probably already do. So that's what I do with a sleepy. The third type of training participant that you might come across is bashful. What's a bashful? Well, bashful is someone who I notice is not participating. So, bashful is very shy, right? So oftentimes you will have participants like that who they're either really shy or maybe it's that they're just not engaged. So I do, because one of the things, when I'm conducting training, I like to involve everybody and I want people to, when we're doing activities and things like that. So if I have someone and I notice they're not volunteering for anything, they're not answering questions, they're not really into it, they're being a bashful. Again, I never want to put them on the spot. I don't want to embarrass them, but I will try to find kind of subtle ways to get them involved. So, if we're doing a group activity and we need a group leader, once we've broken up into groups, I might walk over to that group and say, hey, Joanne, would you mind being the group leader for this one? Something like that. So I try to find ways to get the bashful person involved without embarrassing them. All right, number 4, this is the opposite of the bashful. This is the doc. Okay, what is the doc? Well, the doc is like the know-it-all, right? Doc, They're constantly raising their hand. They're constantly answering the questions. They kind of monopolize the class. Now, don't get me wrong. I appreciate a doc in my class. I don't want to shut them down. I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to feel like they can't participate. But at the same time, I'm trying to create an environment where everybody can participate. I don't want the rest of the class to feel like, oh, that person's going to keep answering the questions. So I'm not going to go out of my way to like shut them down, but I am going to encourage everyone else. So when I see, like, if Steve is my doc and he's constantly raising his hand or coming in with answers, I might say, Steve, I'm going to come right back to you. First, let's hear what Vicky has to say. And again, as you're doing activities, you may make some assignments within those activities to maybe have the doc not take over the entire activity or conversation, things like that. Like, they don't always need to be the group leader, that kind of thing. All right, next we have the Dopey. Now, of course, Dopey, when we think of Dopey, we're thinking of someone who maybe is not very smart, not very bright. Okay, and that's really not what I'm talking about here, okay? What I mean by Dopey in this instance is, like, let's say short attention span, okay? Someone who is just not paying attention. So what do you do with that person who just seems to be totally distracted? Like, you can tell they are not here. Well, there usually is a reason behind it. And that's why this is another one that I will typically talk to that person in private. For example, I had a lady, she was very super distracted. I could tell she just wasn't paying attention. And when I told her, when I asked her and I pointed it out, she said, oh my gosh, I know, I'm so sorry. My mother's in the hospital. She had to go in last night. I've been a little worried. I've been just kind of checking in with her. Totally understandable. Of course you're distracted. So, in that case, I told her, I said, look, if you need to go and you need to reschedule this class, that is okay. All right. And she was very appreciative of that. But it was just letting her know that it was, I was noticing it. And then she was very much on board. She wanted to be there. Similar to the Dopey is the Sneezy. Okay, so what's a Sneezy? Obviously Sneezy was constantly sneezing. I'm not talking literally about someone who's got allergies. They're sneezing all through your class. But the Sneezy is doing something that's making others distracted. With a Sneezy, and particularly if it's something like with a phone, like the phone is going off, ringing, that kind of thing, that I probably will address publicly. If somebody's got some noisy thing going on, I'm probably not going to wait to address that. I'm going to say, hey, everybody, just a reminder, please turn your phones to silent or vibrate. We really want to have your attention throughout this class. That usually does the job. All right, so the seventh dwarf or participant is grumpy. This one is the hardest, okay? Because this is someone who maybe actively doesn't want to be there. I've taught classes before that were like mandatory classes that people had to go to, so they felt some resentment, right? So that can happen. They don't want to be there, or it may be that they're just in a bad mood for other reasons. So how do you handle a grumpy? So you could try to redirect the conversation. There are times when that can be appropriate, when that can work, but there are other times where I could tell that the class as a whole was kind of getting sucked into Grumpy's world. I had the person, she was saying, hey, we don't have time. We've got these quotas. I can't do all these customer service things. And then other people started kind of chiming in. Yeah. Okay. So as the trainer, I was like, okay, this is something that has been inside them. And I knew if I tried to just keep going on with the training as planned, they weren't going to listen. They weren't going to pay attention. And so I decided in that case that I was going to just let them vent. So did it throw off my timing? Did it make me have to skip some parts of the training? Maybe I skipped an activity. Yeah, I did, because I could tell that I was not going to get to go any further until we addressed the elephant in the room. So in this case, I listened to Grumpy. I said, hey, I can see, I can hear that this is a real issue for everybody. Let's hear about it. Tell me more. Tell me more about what you're experiencing and why you think that you're not able to do these different customer service. And I genuinely listened to her. I genuinely listened to the other people in the group, because I wanted to show them that, no, I'm not just some corporate, whatever. I'm actually there on your side. I'm here. I'm with you. So I let them talk. I let them vent. I also asked them, okay, so those are some really good points. What should we do? What do you propose we do as a department, as an organization? What do you want your management to do? What do you want your management to know? So I got a lot of really good information. I took notes. I wrote things on the flip chart. But I gathered information. And at the end of it, I said, look, I can't promise you that I'm going to, wave my hand and make all of this disappear. But what I can do is take this to my management, take it to your management as well, and try to come up with some solution. Once we got that out of the way, once we had that discussion, I was able to continue the training. And you could definitely see a lot of the grumpy went away, and I was able to continue the training. Well, those were 7 training participants that I have come across throughout my career, but I would love to hear from you. What are some of the ones I missed? What are some of the types of participants you have encountered, and how did you handle them? I'd love to hear your story. Please feel free to share them in the comments. And also, if you found this helpful, please give me a like. I always appreciate that. Thank you as always for watching, and we will see you next time.